Welcome back again, as today we explore the really unique feature of combining the convection heat along with microwave energy. And in the Sharp oven you have two combinations, a high mix and a low mix, which gives you an opportunity to cook many foods that take longer than 20 minutes, to cook them in about half the time. So let's just get started cooking, and what I want to do today is to show a pork roast. And so I have a small pork roast here. This is just a little over a pound. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just brush it with a little bit of, it's an equal amount of honey and mustard. And so I just use my silicone pastry brush here and just brush the coating on the outside. What this will do is just add a little flavor to it and also help it to brown. I'm going to insert a microwave-convection thermometer, and this thermometer will just tell me when the meat is done. And so that I won't have to guess about the doneness. So I just insert the thermometer so that it's in the center of the meat, and then what it will do is it'll just tell me the internal temperature. I'm going to put this on the low rack. When we do combination cooking, we use the rack just like we did with convection cooking. So I just put that on the rack, and it makes it a little bit easier to put the soft-sided dishes in and out of the oven. If I was using a glass or a firm-sided dish, then I could have the rack in the oven already. So I just open the oven, set it into the oven on the turntable, and then what I'm going to do here, I'm going to set it manually. So I'm going to push high mix, and I'm going to push it a second time because I want a little higher temperature than the 325 that's pre-programmed into the oven. And then I'm going to set it for 20 minutes. And the reason that there are two combinations is that when you think about microwaving, the microwave time depends almost entirely upon the density as well as the quantity. So with the foods here, if you think about when you're reheating something, if I'm reheating a roll that's about this size, it's going to be warm in about 10 seconds. But if I have the same quantity of mashed potatoes or macaroni and cheese to reheat, it will probably take about a minute and a half. And the difference is density. With the more dense foods, the microwaves can only penetrate about 1/4 of an inch, and then the heat has to gradually get to the center. With the porous roll, the microwaves can travel on air, and so they just travel from one side of the roll to the other. That same principle when we're dealing with the combination settings, that you use the low mix with your more porous things and your things that are going to heat more quickly. So it'll be used with the cakes and large muffins and coffee cakes and delicate things like egg dishes and foods like that. And then we'll use the high mix with something like the roast, a casserole, a very dense type of item. So that when I'm using a small roast, then it's really good for me to increase the temperature a little bit. So here, instead of using the 325 that's pre-programmed into the oven, I changed the oven up to 375. And then that's going to give me more browning on the meat. If I had a 2-pound or over roast so that I could use the CompuRoast, then the 325 would be adequate temperature for it. You notice when I did the roast, I used a silicone dish, and either silicone or glass is very good for combination cooking. When you do combination cooking, you have both microwave and you have convection heat, so you want to use a material that's friendly to both. Sharp has given you some preset settings over here for combination cooking in the CompuRoast settings. And so with these, you have your choice of chicken, turkey breast, or pork. And so if I had a larger roast, what I could do is I could push CompuRoast, and then I could push number 4 for pork roast, and then it will ask me the quantity, so it needs to be at least 2 pounds, so I could put 2 and then 0. Be sure and put the 0 after a whole pound, and then just push start. And then the oven will automatically put in the temperature, and it will automatically set the time for you. Now when the oven starts, it puts all of its energy into preheating, and so the microwave doesn't really come on until the oven gets up to temperature. And so that's why with a smaller piece of meat like this, I like to have the oven hot. Otherwise I have to add about another 10 minutes on it to allow for the oven to get hot. On a larger piece of meat, and when you use the CompuRoast settings, you do not need to preheat because they've allowed for the oven to heat up during those times. Okay, I think our meat is done, so let's just check it and see what the temperature is. And so we look in here, and it's well within the range of being done. So I'm going to just set it out here. And again, with the soft-sided pans, I take them on the rack. They're a little easier to handle. And you can see the thermometer then shows the cooking temperature in it. So I'm going to set this aside, and I want to just take it off of the rack because we're going to use the rack for something else. I'm also going to pull out the thermometer, and then it'll be easier to cover it over. And so I'm going to just place a piece of foil over the top of it, and you can put another dish over the top of it, or you can use a piece of foil. Anything like that will work fine. So that was done on the high mix setting, and so now what I want to do is to do something on the low mix setting. So I mixed up a cake mix. This is just a yellow cake, so I'm going to put it onto the rack, and this is the high-sided 9-inch pan, so I can get a whole package of cake mix. So basically we'll make 2 layers in here. So I'm going to just put it into the oven, and I'm going to push low mix. We did the meat on high mix. I'm going to do the cake on low mix. So I push it, and when I first push it I get 325, but I want 350. So if I push it a second time, it'll say select temperatures. So then I can push number 6 for 350, and then I'm going to put in 22 minutes. With the combination settings, most of your things you can just cut your timings in half. Here I have part of a baguette loaf from a take and bake baguette from the bakery, and I cut it in half, partially because I don't need the whole thing, and also because the whole loaf won't fit into the oven. And so I'm going to just cover the end with a little piece of foil, and that will just keep that cut edge from drying out. And then I'm going to put it in on the low mix setting in a little bit. It took half of the time that was on the package, same temperature, and half the time on the low mix setting. Our cake will be finished in just a little bit, and it worked perfectly with the low mix setting at the same temperature as on the package for 50% of the time. So as soon as it rings, we'll just check it. If it needed a little more time, then I could use the minute plus. So I pull it out here, you can see how it's nicely rounded on the top, and then just press it with your finger or use a toothpick in it to check for doneness. And I'm going to put the bread on the rack, and we're going to just set that back into the oven. And then I'm going to push low mix, and I'll push it twice so I can change it to 375, and then I'll push 4 minutes. That should be adequate time to heat the bread. And so it's going to be heating on the low mix setting, which is 10% microwave. And I do have recipes like this in the cookbooks too. Okay, well that's setting. I'm going to just take the meat and transfer it to a serving plate. Okay, so we'll just cut into the meat so you can have a chance to see what it looks like. And so I'm going to just take a knife and cut down through it. And you can see the meat is nice and juicy and ready to eat. Okay, so our bread is just about finished, and so as soon as the oven rings, then it'll be ready to take out and all ready to serve. So again, be careful because things slide around on here if you want to use one of those silicone hot pads to hold things in place. And so then I can just take the foil off of the end of it and then just cut into the bread. And I don't have a board here, so just cut quickly. It's kind of warm, so and you probably can't see the steam, but it is steamy hot. Well, our cake is cooled enough now that we're going to take it out of the pan. And if you have a glass pan, you would let it cool about 10 to 15 minutes and take it out like normal. With the silicone dishes, we really let things cool as much as possible, and a lot of times I will let things cool completely, just because it's easier to take them out. The food is not fragile, and so it's less apt to stick in the pan or to fall apart. So here it's still slightly warm, but we're going to just put an overturned rack on it so that when I turn it up, I can have something to support it. And then I'm going to just be sure the pan is loosened, and I kind of stretch the pan a little bit, flex it a little bit to help to get all of the sides loosened. And so here you can see how the bottom of the cake is nicely browned. And then I'm going to just take and put my cake plate on top of that and then turn it upside down like this. And then we have a cake that's all ready to serve. So we've had a chance today to see how well the combination setting will work to speed up your cooking. And so just remember to use the low mix for the delicate things and the aerated foods, and use the high mix for your larger quantities and the more dense foods. And so that would be like your roasts and your casseroles. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and we have one more video yet to go, and that will be on broiling. So I hope you will join me for that.